Okay, so we are live. Haiti Oropesa with the Florida U Judge. We had Luke Lirot scheduled for tonight. He confirmed with me yesterday. I don't know what's going on. He seems to be missing in action, but we're gonna go a couple of minutes earlier. This is a pretty and we're gonna have call-ins too, by the way. So if you want to call in and this is Florida U Judge, and the reason why that I named it Florida you judges because we're just going to put out facts, accurate facts, and you decide after you hear it. We're not trying to push any type of agenda or view on you. You decide after we discuss facts that we have learned about. So you can call in if you want. 813-221-9700. I'm going to allow Chris Ingram to do the weigh-in after I kind of do a little bit of highlights of the facts. So we learned this week he has to get going because he's being a good daddy and picking up his daughter. So we're gonna award him by letting him weigh in first. So he's gonna be able to be here for like till until 7, 10, 10, 12. Okay, so this is what we know, and I want to thank Alexandra Gilmore. It's always fun to have her on. She's a very involved activist. She recently ran for this very position, not in the same district. Was it in District 5 that you ran?
No, it's District 3.
Okay. So, but she did, that's something that she's very involved with the kids, protecting the kids. She's always posting about that as a wonderful mom. If you follow her on her Facebook, you'll see how involved she is with her two sons, Bryce and Caleb. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Okay. And so, Chris, here's the thing. We read this week that Tammy Shamburger, she was the incumbent prior to the election results of District 5, was seeking another term. Henry Shake Washington, very popular in the Tampa Bay area, in Hillsborough, also ran. He won by over 10,000 votes. So now there's a lawsuit that's been filed. Tammy Shamburger hired an attorney who filed a lawsuit. If you go to FloridaUJudge.com, I've gone ahead and uploaded the actual complaint with the facts that I'm about to recite real quickly so that to allow Chris to give his weigh in. And also a motion to dismiss. So there's been a motion to dismiss that's been filed by Henry Shakes. Oh, so there he goes. Woo! Yay! Okay. Luke, can you hear me?
Hey, beautiful. How are you?
You're such a nice and kind and gentleman. I'm great. Chris has to leave.
I can hear you a little shaky. I may have to move. Can you hear me? I'm going to get closer to my router.
Yes. If you connect the Ethernet cable to the laptop, it works wonders. I did not do that before. I was having continual freezing, like the screen freezing up, connectivity issues. But so I learned that you have to connect the Ethernet from the router into your laptop to minimize that, if not totally. But just listen because I want Chris to weigh in first. He has a time crunch, so I want him to listen. So for those of you that are watching, these facts that I'm about to recite are facts that I pulled from the actual legal complaint that was filed and from the motion to dismiss that was filed by Henry Shake Washington's attorney. So the basis, and this is the issue, and this is all I want commentary on. Shamburger's position is Shake Washington was never qualified to run in this race because of an issue with what is his residency. He lives either at, and then I've taken care to, he either lives at this house, and I'm going to show you. This house is in Seffner. It's outside of District 5. Right. His wife lives there, and so does his daughter. He had his homestead exemption there. According to the complaint, the legal complaint, the lawsuit, he had the homestead exemption for decades until about a year or so, presumably because he knew he was wanting to run in District 5. He basically said, I'm going to not claim the homestead of this house anymore. There's no homestead in this house, which again, it's titled in his name along with his wife. We know why homestead is so important. Now that homestead is nowhere, leaving his that home vulnerable. The other home, which is in District 5, is this one. It's the Willow home. His mother-in-law lives there. This home is in a trust, which would then, if she passes away, would go to Sheikh's wife and her brother. Okay, so he, about a year or so before seeking to qualify to run for District 5, he signed a 2-year lease with his mother-in-law to stay in a room in that house. Okay, so he's living in the house with his mother-in-law instead of the Seffner house, this one right here, which is not in District 5, where his wife and daughter live. Okay, so the Shamburger suit basically says he never qualified, and unique to a school board race, you have to have intent to reside and actually reside permanent, have it as your permanent resident at the time that you qualify, unlike other races where you can move after you win. So they're saying he really lives in Seffner. He's lived there for decades with his wife and daughter, and only recently changed to the Willow house with his mother-in-law, and did a lease for 2 years there, but that he really lives here in this house with his wife and daughter. He had accepted homestead for decades until 2020, when he inexplicably stopped claiming homestead. That to me is a little weird, because I want homestead protection as anybody else would that is being what's the word? I don't know how you would leave your home without homestead protection.
Why would you give up a statutory protection?
Well,
ever?
it's not it's not a statutory protection. It's a tax advantage protection. And I think actually Luke, I'm not an attorney, but I think from a legal standpoint, what Mr. Washington did was actually the legal and appropriate thing to do, given his intent, which was to change his resident domicile from the home in Seffner to the home on Willow to allow him to be legally qualified to run for District 5. And so I think a lot of this is all much ado about nothing. And Mrs. Shamburger, who lost by 10,000 votes, 45 to 55%, 55% of the voters did not vote for her. And she's trying to circumvent the constituents' vote because she's not happy with the outcome. And she's chasing a wild goose and trying to turn it into a chicken. And it's just not going to work. And we see this a lot in elections where elected officials or people running for elected office who are a little bit unhappy with the result pull out all sorts of things. We saw it here with President Trump in this November election for the presidency, claiming all sorts of nonsense and ridiculousness in the name of the law, and trying to sway public opinion because they're not happy with the outcome of the voters. And Mrs. Shamburg really needs to just come to a grip. I said this about, and I'm a Republican, I said on election night in November that Donald Trump was going to lose. I said it at 9:30.
You did, and I read that.
Haiti saw it. I looked at the numbers, said it's over. And I've got all these Republicans up until even today saying, no, it's not over. And how can you say that? And blah, blah, blah. Look, reality is what we need to focus on here. And Mrs. Shamburger's attempt to circumvent the will of the voters by making this charge, which, you know what, it actually has some merit in the sense of, is this common and normal?
Right.
I would say no. It doesn't pass the proverbial smell test.
But
at the end of the day, the law is focused more on what was his intent and what did he do and what does the paperwork say. And all of the latter says that Sheikh Washington lives in the district in which he was elected.
And you know what? I can appreciate that. And but there are people. In fact, there was a complaint made to the Division of Elections prior to the election, the result of the election, claiming, listen, I hear activists and the community rumblings, and I got to tell you that this has been an issue that I've listened to in the community questioning his intent. We can't really see what his intent. His intent might be, because in his pleading, in the motion to dismiss, he says he regularly stays at the Seffner home with his wife.
Occasionally, I think he says he occasionally stays there, not regularly.
No,
Right.
no. I sent you the pleadings. You got them. It says regularly. We can go and
Okay,
refer
so
to
then
that.
what does regularly mean?
Okay, listen. I appreciate Chris. I'm being a moderator here. I want to be fair to everyone, but you're right. He did the right thing by losing his homestead. But again, this is I compliment and thank you for your intellectual honesty, because you're acknowledging there is some merit to this. It's not normal for me and for a lot of people that I've asked about just the regular Joe off the street. I've asked friends, close friends who are not lawyers or not in the political scene or anything. Is this normal to not live with your wife and your daughter in your home, but with your mother-in-law? I'm sorry, that's not normal.
And I agree with you 100%, Haiti. It's not normal, but it's also not normal that some people are swingers. 99.9% of people don't swing, but there are people out there who are swingers who would think nothing of, a strange type of betting situation like this or something else. And I'm not suggesting that Sheikh Washington is engaged in that, but what I'm saying is there are all sorts of anomalies and weird things that go on that don't necessarily pass the smell test, but they don't rise to the level of being illegal or in violation of the law.
I know, but if all of a sudden,
Chris,
you've developed
Chris, let me comment on a couple things. First of all, the one thing that, and I agree with you, there's a lot of really fact-specific issues in this case. I read the whole complaint. I read the motion to dismiss. I looked at the statutes. And I guess the good side of this is that they're very specific statutes. You have to be a resident of the district that you're running for to qualify, and you have to have been a resident 71 days before the election, which would, in this, I looked it up, August 28th would have been the deadline. And what really kind of strikes me is that, is this actually a residence, or is this something that was created to look like a residence to sustain that requirement to qualify? And that's really the fact to me. The one thing that you did say, and I think just to me, the overarching concern is we got an entire chapter in the Florida statutes that provides for the ability to contest an election. And watching all of this presidential Trump mumbo jumbo for all this time, I think has cast doubt on anyone that would ever try to challenge an election. And that troubles me. And quite honestly, I'm not going to say that one of these parties will win or one will lose, but from my perspective, there's definitely enough there to call for some kind of an evidentiary evaluation. Is this a legitimate establishment of a residence, which isn't defined in the election code? It's defined in the homestead code, and they're pretty tight about it. I mean, other parts of the Florida statutes, you can only have one residence. And I would agree with Haiti that is it customary to say, I'm going to move away from my wife and daughter and move in with my mother-in-law and call that my residence in order to qualify? And to me, it's unfortunate that it is such a technicality, but it's an absolute statutory requirement. So that's where the rubber meets the road. But I enjoy your comments.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. Unfortunately, what the will and the intent of the person who's running versus what society looks at and says, is this normal, doesn't always jive with, what the law was written as and to be. And, you're absolutely right about what's going on with the President Trump and everything, and people having these second guessings of what's going on in our election law. But look, here's another thing. These kinds of things come up all the time. We have a state senator in Tampa, Janet Cruz, who never lived in her district when she was initially elected, yet was able to circumvent the law by claiming that she did, living at her boyfriend's house or husband, that she never, just crazy stuff. And at the end of the day, the state and the courts come down and find what was the intent. If the intent was that the person was intending to live in that district, and that if most of the paperwork and such, the evidence suggests that that's what they were doing based on their filings, where their driver's licenses showing that they live and that kind of thing. That's what comes into play. And the commonsensical stuff that really matters to everyday average voters, which is, what house do you live with your wife? Which really should probably have more bearing than where is your voter registration and your driver's license. It doesn't have any meaning. It doesn't have any real significance.
Right, we have a call-in. Go ahead, caller.
Yes. The comment is, this is not the way you do the proper way. If you're running for a seat, you have to move physically, you and your wife and the entire family.
That's not what the statute says.
Wife did not want to move.
That's not true.
Set it up and planned it just perfectly. This is not even nothing concerning Donald Trump on how he did everything. This is concerning the fact that this gentleman decided to plan on how he could run without really leaving his home.
That may be the case, but nowhere does the statute says nowhere does the statute say that you have to have your wife and child move with you.
Hold on. We gotta listen to one person only. Go, ma'am. Continue.
He ran for city commissioner. I'm in a different county. He ran for city commissioner. He moved his entire family across the street from me before time, and he ran like he was supposed to have made to run. He won the election, so he had to stay. You do not sit here and plan to live with your mother-in-law and to use that address. He did not own the home. He committed a crime.
No, that's not a crime that I know of. Is it a crime, Luke?
It simply would result in his disqualification. I don't think there's any criminal penalty attached.
Well, and if I could point out, Luke.
Okay, thank you for your call, ma'am. Is there anything else?
No, that's it.
Thank you. Thanks for calling.
Luke, I think what you just said is really important as it relates to the bogus lawsuit that Shamburger has filed, which is she is calling for him to not only be expelled from consideration and from office, but that she then be appointed, or anointed the winner of this election. When in fact, nowhere in the statute does it say that if someone is found to have been illegally elected, that the second or third place winner then advances. That's just preposterous. And
okay, well, listen,
that's one of the things in this lawsuit that just lend to make people see that this is just nonsense.
Chris, I think it's unfair for you to call it bogus because
it is bogus.
Okay, well, that's your opinion.
It's not.
Luke, there's a motion to dismiss. You've read it. I sent all of you.
I read every bit of it, and I looked at the statute.
Do you think that the motion to dismiss is going to be granted?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people confuse a motion to dismiss with whether or not you got a legitimate case. And quite honestly, you know it as well as I do. All you have to do to survive a motion to dismiss, to defeat a motion to dismiss, is state a cause of action within the four corners of the complaint. I read the complaint. It looks like that at least there's a legitimate statement of a cause of action. I mean, there's a lot of exhibits that show, to me, legitimate questions. In the motion to dismiss, they're trying to say that he bought a mattress and did a lot of things to give the appearance that he has changed his residence to his mother-in-law's house. But it seems like a really tough factual decision. So I don't think a motion to dismiss will be granted. I really don't. I think that and you have to remember, due process lets people with even the most outlandish cases, and I'm not saying this is outlandish, but they give you a chance to make your case in court, to present your evidence, present your testimony, and let a finder of fact decide who it is that puts more weight on the scales of justice. I think there's enough here to survive a motion to dismiss and then let the judicial, or I don't know if this is a jury trial, but
yeah, that's what I had that question too today.
I don't know. In fact, the one thing about the complaint I don't remember is if they asked for a jury trial. It might just simply be a judicial finding because it's ruling on the law. But there are factual disputes to me that I think need to be evaluated under proper application of the rules of evidence.
And after reading the facts in the pleadings, which again, the viewers, for those of you who are interested, go to FloridaUJudge.com. The complaint is there. So it's the motion to dismiss. I would disagree with you respectfully, Chris. I don't agree with you at all that it's bogus. I think there's enough there to raise a question about whether Sheikh Washington did all of this. It's a sham legal residence. There's a question about that. I'm sorry. And you made the swinger analogy. You know what? It would be likened to somebody not ever having a swinger predilection and all of a sudden starting to swing in order to win an election.
But none of that matters. None of that matters. It doesn't matter whether they had a previous predilection for this, that, or the other. It's an individual is entitled to change the lifestyle in which they live. The factual evidence of this case is what was his intent and what do the documents show? And the documents show that he moved to that residence within the district and that was his intent. Whether or not that conforms to societal norms about where a man lays on a particular day in a house, whether his wife is there or not, is completely not relevant to the
Chris, here's the complaint or the motion to dismiss. This is it. Listen, let me talk. His attorney in the motion to dismiss said that he regularly goes to visit his family to assist taking care of the Seffner home.
Right.
Why is he regularly going there? Because that's probably where he lives.
I regularly go and assist my mom and my dad who live in Naples to help them with various chores and their physical needs as elderly people. That doesn't mean I live there.
An issue whether he's been doing what you say you do regularly with your parents. He's been doing that for decades until a year before wanting to run in District 5. All of a sudden it changed.
Because his intent was to move his domicile, his primary residence.
Well, you know what? Here's this, and we shall see. And you know what? I agree with Luke. I don't think the judge is going to dismiss it or should, based on the facts that I'm reading and a lot of people are reading. Here's what they claim, and I'm interested. I want to see this. They say, because you know what? Here's what's going to happen. He wants to be a school board member. I don't care
he is a school board
who wins or not. He has a good reputation of being an honorable guy. But if this is true, they're saying in their complaint that they have video evidence. We spoke about this, Chris, yesterday, and that's the smoking gun. Again, not Tammy Shamburger, other people in the community spoke with me over the phone about this issue. And I told them, you're going to have to get surveillance, get a private investigator, and you're going to have to surveil him for a significant amount of time to see where, in fact, he resides. Surreptitiously, you're going to have to pay someone to obtain that footage. The complaint says that they have still Washington's true residence is not a secret to the community, and abundant evidence exists, including witness videos and photos to show that Washington was not qualified to run for the school board seat at the time of qualifying. So I can't wait to see whatever it is that they have. Luke.
It's gonna have to be based on the evidence, but I can't call it bogus. And what really concerns me is that the statutes to provide whether you're qualified or not call for residency. No definition of that in any of the election statutes. The only real definitions are in the homestead statutes, and they're very strict. I mean, your residency, you can only have one. And I guess to me, the argument is what Hades talked about. You know, here we look at some customary things, right? We've got a wife, we've got a daughter, we got a house that's outside District 5. And now someone says, I'm leaving my wife and my daughter to move in with my mother-in-law to qualify. Is that really a sufficient showing that you're a resident of the district in order to run for office? And I can't say that.
You know what gets weirder? Here's what gets weirder. In order to rebut or to respond to what most people are going to think that that's odd, to not live with your wife and your daughter, to live with your mother-in-law in a room, and to counter that, listen, this is even weirder to me. The reason that they give in, and again, this is not me, this is the motion to dismiss. They're saying that His connection to this home goes back many decades, however. His high school principal, the man who inspired him to become an educator, lived in the same house while principal of Middleton High School. And when Middleton High School was reopened in 2002, Mr. Washington was chosen to be the principal who reopened the school. Living in this home while running for and serving on the school board felt meaningful and symbolic to Mr. Washington. So he wants to be in the aura of the former principal that he admired, that inspired him to be an educator. He wants to be there, maybe conjure up the spirit.
That's a great spin, isn't it? Isn't that
weird? He has a connection. That's awesome.
Well, he should have connected a long time ago to make it more believable.
I love it. I mean, to me, that just adds a whole lot more flavor to the whole analysis. But
absolutely,
I don't think anybody just looking at these pleadings can make a final determination. And I would agree with Chris. I mean, you know, I don't think it's what's the old song? Papa was a Rolling Stone, wherever he laid his hat was his home. It's a little more formal than that, but I don't know that there isn't some exception to what would be the norm that we've talked about with living with your wife and your daughter. Can you actually move in order to qualify to run for office? And I guess is buying a mattress enough? I don't know.
Well,
I mean, it's tough.
Luke, as an attorney, now this isn't your specialty, but as an attorney, certainly you should know there are a lot of men out there who face irreconcilable differences within their marriages that go and buy a mattress and end up sleeping somewhere else. You know, I mean, you can claim all sorts of different things. I gotta go.
My wife
gotta run. I'm sorry, I have to run. But I enjoyed talking to all of y'all.
It was fun, Chris.
Excellent.
Okay,
thank you. All the best, man. Happy holidays.
Have a good night.
Happy holidays. Okay.
Merry Christmas to all.
Okay, this is for you, Luke.
You're kidding me. You actually have it.
Alexandra, you haven't said anything. That's very not common.
So I know I wanted to chime in so bad. I'm so bothered by
you have all the time you want. Go. And if anybody wants to call, any additional persons wish to call, you may. Luke is here. He's gonna hang out with us for the remainder of the show. So 813-221-9700. You may call. Ask Luke a question. Ask Alexandra a question. Go, Alexandra.
So when we say that, you know, Chris said a lot. He pretty much is in favor that, you know, Tammy doesn't have a right to investigate what was going on with shaking his resident. And Luke, you know, showed that, you know, she does have a right to be able to figure out. And as a mother, an involved mother of the school system, I'm highly offended. I'm offended because as Black women, we have certain women like Tanya McDowell, Ohio mom, Kelly Williams Baylor, that were chastised, sentenced, brought up to court for changing their address for the betterment of their child's education. So when it comes to Black moms or Black fathers, we're giving a harsher sentence. Right. And so to assume that, oh, this is cute and he didn't do anything unjust. And I'm like, look, I don't know. But what I'm seeing is from the story, I think it sounds very weird. As being in relationships and being married, I'm like, why would my husband stay with my mom? Now,
all right, hold on. We have a caller. We have a caller. Go, caller. You're on the air.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I just wanted to say that a bona fide residency requirement asks a person to establish that he actually lives at a certain location, and usually that's demonstrated by the address listed on the driver's license, a voter registration card.
Well, yeah, he has those. He has the Willow address, the one where he's claiming he's living in the district. The Willow address, that is the address that is on his driver's license and on his voter's registration. So his attorney included that in the pleading. That's
right.
Part of the proof they're offering that is in fact his legal residence.
And I guess the question is,
the evidence
ma'am, you're gonna have to you're playing Facebook is I can hear it in the background. Could you like turn that off while you're asking or making your comment?
Yes, ma'am. It's off.
Okay, great.
So basically, once that evidence has been proven, then I don't understand what the problem would be. I mean, there's the evidence.
Luke, go. What would be the problem with then him being asserted that did not qualify, because what would be the problem with that? Maybe they would do that in order to keep up an appearance that is, when in fact he's regularly or really staying at the Seffner home with his wife and his daughter.
Is it an artifice to create your qualification? Is it something that legitimately shows a change in residence, or is it simply a change in documentation to be able to assert that you're qualified as opposed to actually being a resident in the district? That to me is the issue.
How do you prove that? I don't understand how you would prove that.
Well, to me, it's, and I think they've talked about some surveillance. It's the same type of a situation where a guy says, I was in a car wreck and I can't work and I can't walk and I've got a walker. And then they follow him and they see him playing tennis and working out and any number of things. So they know what he said, even though he said it under oath, most likely. It's not really based on the way that he lives and the facts of how he goes through his day-to-day affairs. If this gentleman doesn't, I mean, and again, I read I guess they tried to show that he bought a mattress. That really struck me. I know I've mentioned that like probably 10 times already, but can you buy a mattress and change your license and change your voter's registration and leave your wife and your daughter in what was originally your true residence to move in with your mother-in-law and then qualify? I mean, to me, there's a whole lot of question created by that. Are you sincerely a resident, or is it just a technicality that you can modify by buying a mattress and changing some documents? That's the question. I don't know the answer to that. And there's no case that talks about that. But like I said, certainly not in the electric case.
I don't think you can create a definition other than what the definition is. It doesn't matter whether or not he bought a mattress. It doesn't matter whether or not any of that took place. What matters is that this is what qualifies a residency requirement. And so when you say that, it's like the proof is in the pudding. All of the establishments were done. So I'm not sure as to what you would have to fight that.
Well, I think because, and here's where it gets a little bit technical. When it comes to construing statutes, you got to look to the definitions. And again, there's so many different statutes that focus on the concept of residency. Because there's no definition in any of the election-related statutes, you look to the dictionary. And the dictionary is much more common sense than just simply the technical change. So even if you go through that process, if it hasn't been a legitimate change in residency, if it's simply to create the appearance of a change in residency, I think that's an issue that has to be determined by the court. And I think that would vote against anybody.
So for those viewers who wish to actually go, I have on Florida You Judge blog posted the actual, here's the complaint. You can go ahead and click on that hyperlink and you'll go ahead and be able to read the complaint. This is what I do want to reference now that we're talking about this and the definition. The motion to dismiss included an exhibit, the Florida Elections Commission. Again, somebody back in July of this year, prior to the election results, somebody else unrelated that I don't think there's any relation there with Shamburger, but this individual made a complaint. And at the end, it's interesting because the Florida Elections Commission says that when in focusing on what is the definition of a legal residence, they've relied on case law because there is no actual anywhere definition. So they relied on case law and opinion of the division. And it says a legal residence is the place where a person has a fixed abode with the present intention of making it their permanent home. So, Luke, speak to that. Could you, with that definition, fixed abode and an intent of making it your permanent home, the very motion to dismiss filed by his attorney says he's regularly going to this home, the one that's outside the district. That's where he's lived for decades with his wife and daughter. And all of a sudden,
right. And I mean, when did he move? He moved right before the election.
Because he wants to get close to his the former principal that he has a connection with.
Well, I don't know about any of that. I mean, that's a very, I think that's kind of what we call a heartfelt argument. Doesn't have a lot of. Yeah, and I guess it's certainly useful, but to me, is it legit to move in with your mother-in-law to qualify for an election and then buy a mattress and say, that's now my residence? I don't know. To me, and against her, have at it.
Says it's weird. Oline Moara says it's weird. Okay, ma'am. Is anything else you want to add, ma'am?
No, I just don't see how this is going to be overturned. I don't see how this would not be dismissed because I'm looking at the same definition, and I guess this is just not working out for me according to what you all are saying.
Okay, well, listen, I don't know what's going to happen. I seem to agree with Attorney Luke Lirot that the motion to dismiss won't be granted. Who knows what the judge is going to do, but I'm going to be following up. I'm sure most of the community who's interested in this race or in this story will as well. Thank you for calling, ma'am. Thank you for your call.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And I just want to add that one thing, and we're saying about, well, why did he move there? Because he was closer. But at the same time, we have to remember District 3 had an open seat. So when we're talking about District 3 had an open seat that Cindy Stewart had left. She was not rerunning again. And so he had the opportunity to run in District 3. So if he's saying he felt closer to those in, the Black community, just an FYI with how the zoning works, there are people in Sulphur Springs off of Fletcher that are zoned in District 3. They live in District 5, but they're zoned in District 3, like Wharton High School, Freedom. You have Greco Middle School. These are all these districts that have schools that have Black individuals, Black children that need the same help. So when you say so it's a little bit questionable to me because I ran in District 3 and I've been at those schools currently. I've seen King High School, I've seen Greco, Wharton, I've seen Sulphur Spring, I've seen it all. So when we're talking about he's about the kids, but you could have stayed in your home and ran for the open seat in District 3. Not only just ran, had more than one Black seat at the table. Why have a Black woman that was already in that seat, whether or not someone likes her or not, or didn't like her attitude, or whatever it is that you felt the need for her personally, was she doing what she needed to do? Okay, even if you felt like she wasn't doing it, don't take away the fact that we need more than one seat at the table. And this was an opportunity for Mr. Sheikh Washington to change the dynamic of the school board seats and have more than one seat at the table. Why have Blacks go against each other like that when he's laying there?
Luke, do you think he's going to have a problem now being under incredible stress, pressure, anxiety? Because in the next 4 years, do you think maybe some folks will be interested in getting extensive surveillance to then revisit this and call into question his character and what he qualified and swore to, and versus the reality? You think somebody should be stressed about that?
That's such an individual determination, because quite honestly, you heard the last caller. She felt that because he met the technical definitions that was fine. And then we heard other callers say it's a little weird, it may not be that fine. And again, and I don't know if I finished this thought, but this goes by the dictionary definition. There's all the other statutes with the definitions. They're not incorporated by reference anywhere here. So it's a dictionary definition. What is your residence? And this is, I don't want to call it a stretch, but to me, it's going to be a harder battle to establish that this is all a legitimate residence, as opposed to some calculated effort simply to change certain formalities to qualify. And I was going to say, Alexandra, so he lived in a location where there was no person that he would have to run against? I mean, clearly, to me, the whole decision's made. People want to, if you want to run for office, you want to take the easiest spot you can. And with all this, term limits, things like that. You see people moving around like chess pieces, which really kind of boggles the mind. But long story short, are you suggesting to me that he moved to this other district because he felt he had a better opportunity to win?
Yeah. Yeah, I think because he was so known, he had been in the school district. He had worked in the school district. So in District 3, which he didn't feel as familiar with, he didn't run, but there was no incompetent, right? There was no one running against. Cindy Stewart had stepped away. So why not take District 3, where your home and resident had been for years, and run there and work with Tammy or whomever had won. It might have not been Tammy. It could have been the other candidates that were running, and then work with them and have more than one seat at the table. Why run against a Black woman or other Blacks that actually lived in District 5 and not run against them and make that district, holistically better, that we have more than one person of color, because we have Black kids at Freedom. We have Black kids at Wharton. We have them busing those kids off of Bears and Fletcher and Sulphur Springs. We have Greco Middle School. So that's what makes me think you went out your way to leave your wife, to stay with your mother-in-law, which is completely, I'm sorry, I'm not saying I'm on one side, but as a woman, I would not be okay with my man living with my mother. Why? Because if there's something wrong with my mama, I'm going to see about my mama, because that's my mama. If my husband or my man or boyfriend is going to check on my mama, I'm going with my husband to check on my mama, because
I don't think that's what they're saying. I don't think that's the reason he's saying. Again, they're saying that the home has a special connection. There's some special meaning. It's symbolic. Let's Lean.
But also, does all of that heartwarming material make it a residence? I don't know. Wow. That's tough to me. That's a tough call.
It bothers my spirit, because I even have to think about it. Like, my mom has a P.O. box. And so just because she has a P.O. box doesn't mean she lives at that address. So right. I can put an address, but that doesn't mean you live at that address. So if you're
I don't think you can live in a P.O. box though.
Right, you don't. You don't. So it makes me kind of think different ways on why was it so big. I hear the whole spiritual thing about whomever. I have people that were great, and I'm younger than him, but I don't need to live in their home because they were great educators to me. And that doesn't do anything. I show the ways in which I teach my children and reach out to other children and those in the community of what I've been taught.
So O'Lean says, no, he planned this, and not this is the same as Donald Trump. We had Alyssa Katz. Hey, Alyssa, swingers. That was her reaction, I guess, to the analogy of the swinger.
I love that.
Trevor Rosine, in my mind, I would think the point of the requirement to be a resident of the district, to be eligible to run in it, is to show you have an interest of the people who live in it. But he has taken every reasonable step to be a resident of the district, so there's no reason he shouldn't be afforded to run. Well, he already did run and won, and so but thanks for weighing in, Trevor.
I mean that's another argument. I mean clearly, and to me, obviously no one challenged votes unless they've been unsuccessful. But just because you're unsuccessful doesn't mean you don't have the right to challenge the outcome of an election. So the people that are just going to spontaneously say that the will of the voters should never be tampered with, I'm going to disagree with that, because the qualifications and the requirement that you live where you're going to represent people is very important. I think it gets down to the whole concept of grassroots and people representing their community. And if in fact in the election code they define community as a specific district that you have to be a resident in, then that's the rule. That's what you have to do. And it just comes down to the question, was this something that was done to artificially create some concept or appearance of a residence to allow you to run, or is it actually the legitimate manifestation of all of these different factors to say, this is why I moved into this house, left my wife, left my daughter, bought a mattress? Is that enough to make that your official your residence? And to me, that's a very, very tough situation. I mean, clearly, there might be people that make the argument, look at the commitment of this man. He left his family and moved in with his mother-in-law with a mattress on the floor. And I don't know that, I'm just making that up. But he bought a mattress and moved in somebody that would make that kind of a sacrifice, isn't that the kind of guy you want showing up for you?
You know what? And that's a really good point, Luke. Honestly, let's be fair. You judge, viewers. There's going to possibly be a hearing where facts are going to be reviewed by the court, whether it's a jury or non-jury, a hearing.
Yeah.
But you made a really good point. And to be fair, it could be that something that most of us look at as being weird, it might be that he has such a commitment to serve that district that he would, and with the blessing of his wife, because his attorney's pleading says sometimes the wife, that's her mother's home, by the way, sleeps over, and they do regular sleepover. Sometimes he sleeps at the Seffner home. Sometimes they hang out at the Willow home. And so that's certainly, even though most of us would look at that with some oddity, maybe it's true. Maybe the wife said, you know what, honey, go move in with my mother. If you really want to serve, you have your heart so committed to serving that district, that school district, do it. And to us, it might seem odd, but he may really decided and committed to living there for that purpose. That's a great point that you make. I mean,
maybe it is sincere, but here's what, if let's just say hypothetically that we're the judge. All right, we're a 3-judge panel. Okay, Alexandra.
Okay.
If somebody says we've surveilled this fine gentleman, and I don't know this to be true, I'm just simply speaking this hypothetically, and he slept 2 nights at the house within the district, but 29 nights at the house with his mother and daughter.
That would be a problem.
I'm going to conclude that if that's really what the evidence would support, that, again, I don't want to, you'll play the song again, but wherever I lay my hat is my home. I would say that if you're predominantly, you're going to get me moving here. I think, to me, that's going to be a really, really important factor. And I would think that if there was going to be this effort undertaken to litigate, and there's a factual dispute, that enough research, investigation, surveillance has been done so that somebody has the evidence to present on that issue. To me, that's a really important issue. And I don't know that it says anything about that in the statutes, but since there is no definition and it's based largely on common sense,
they should create a definition.
Yeah. I'm going to probably, and I think they probably should add a legitimate definition, because something as important as this in our election laws shouldn't be left to the dictionary definition. There should be some specific criteria set out in the statute to give everybody some guidance so that we're not left in the position that we've had to struggle with all night. But I just think, how many nights here, how many nights there? I think that's an important factor.
That's why I'm asking. That's why I'm asking that, whether now, as a follow-up, I'm interested in seeing what video footage Shamburger's attorney obtained prior to filing the lawsuit, because it could be that's going to be an evidentiary piece. But what if now, do you think he's going to have to live under the stress if he was doing something like that only 2 days in Willow, right? 2 days there, 29 days there. Is he going to, if that is what ultimately is occurring, maybe not. Maybe he's most of the time in Willow. Do you think he's going to be concerned about that? Having people surveil him and get more footage to maybe, I don't know if he's going to run for a re-election. This would be 4 years out, but I mean, and I don't think he's 75 years old. Maybe this is his last thing, but you think he should be concerned about that?
I'm not criticizing him, but here's another difficulty. This has to have been your residence 71 days before November 3rd. So how do you, after this, and I don't know I have no idea what surveillance was or was not done. Maybe there was surveillance done around that time, or maybe it's,
I see what you're saying.
Surveillance. Does that, and I had a case the other day where we were arguing about the nature of a business, and we were trying to bring up issues as far as how we operate now that we've got the effort to survive from COVID. And the arbitrator said, well, that's now, we're going back, the issues in this case go back to 2018 when there was no COVID. So I don't think any of that is relevant to what was the situation then. So time frame is important.
What you're saying, Luke, if they didn't have, if they weren't getting footage at that time when it matters during that window, then if now they're trying to challenge it after November 3rd, then whatever footage is probably not going to be meaningful, right?
You know something, I'm not going to say that. I think it would be meaningful because, you know, your habits are your habits. I mean, to me.
But it would have been ideal to do it.
Here would be my argument. Let's say that 71 days ago, he spent every night there. But now it's after the election, and now he spends 2 nights a month there. I think that would indicate to me that the statement that that's his residence was contrived to meet the qualifications. If he did it then just to do it, and now he's not doing it anymore, I would make that argument. I think that would be a big issue. But to me, current behavior, I think, would be relevant to that to indicate whether or not the prior behavior was designed to contrive the meeting of those qualifications. And I have no idea. I mean, the guy could be there every night at the house within the district. I have no idea. But those are the issues that I'd be interested in.
This comment is interesting. We're going to go ahead. She's been very active tonight. Oline Mora. Am I saying that pronouncing? Do you know her? Because I don't want to butcher her last name. But she says this is a good point. Then they should have moved to the mother-in-law, the entire family. I agree. That's a good point.
That's a good point. Yeah, definitely. If that's what you were about, you said it was the significance of the feeling of the home, then why not bring your wife and your daughter into that significant and sell that home? Because you can do it. Is he going to sell it now? I mean, if it means so much, why not?
I agree with that.
I do too. Point. Because if that's my husband or my wife, why do I want to be away from my significant other either, you know?
Okay. All right. So anything, we have a couple of minutes left. We've gone on for an hour almost. It's going to be till 8. Anybody, we still have a good number of viewers now live. If you want to call, again, the call in is 813-221-9700. So Luke, wrap up, and Alexandra, and then I'm signing off because I'm hungry.
Okay. Well, I think there are so many moving parts here, but quite honestly, I think this really just comes down to a common sense decision. Was this done in good faith, or was it simply done to give the appearance of qualifying? And I think that where he's living now, where he lived then, what evidence you can develop to show where he actually spends the night, because to me, that's very indicative of a residence. I think that's going to be really important.
Okay, I think we have a call in. Keep talking, Luke. I'm going to get them back on.
Okay. No, but and I heard the statement about the will of the voters. Candidly, the will of the voters is not a factor in meeting the qualifications. So if somebody got 1 vote, but the person they're running against didn't make the qualifying conditions of being a proper candidate, a lawful candidate, then the will of the voters just doesn't matter. This is really, it's a question of your character, how sincere you are, and what you've tried to do. And I think there's certainly enough elements to evaluate, enough variables that I think a decision can be made based on the evidence and testimony. And I think
we have a caller.
What's more creative?
We have a caller. Elvis, how are you? Good evening.
Good evening. How are you doing, Adi Opeso?
I'm doing good.
Yes. Well, I was calling in because, of course, this is the topic of tonight about the lawsuit filed. I ran in District 5 also for school board. It was very clear that Sheikh Washington didn't live in the district before he filed. I had spoke with Sheikh Washington several times where he said he really didn't want to run because he did not want it to be revealed that he was not in District 5. He several times, several people have filed an ethics complaint concerning it, but he knew he didn't live in District 5. And as he gave, it was completely deceitful, malicious intent to do it, because he knew we had personally several conversations before he ever filed for office concerning this. So I know that this is really needed to be had, because I think people have to stop manipulating the system, filing in one seat where you don't live just to run for another office. So
Elvis, why didn't you run in District 3? I mean,
evidence.
As popular as he is, why wouldn't he run in District 3?
Was my principal in 2002, and we all know and been knowing forever that Sheikh lived in Seffner.
Okay, so Elvis, Luke has a question for you as to why do you think Mr. Washington did not run in District 3 if that's where the Seffner home is at?
Well, what happened in District 3 was, as soon as Cindy Stewart, he did not know that Cindy Stewart would not be on the ballot. What Sheikh Washington understood also, because again, this is me talking to him personally, when Cindy Stewart decided that she wasn't going to run, I called Sheikh and said, well, now you can run in the district where you live. Me and him had that conversation because it's a free seat. It's an open seat. He said, why don't you run? If you get out of 5 and go into 3, I could help you raise money and etc. I said, no, sir, I'm not going to do that. And so therefore, what ended up happening, he didn't run for 3 because his power source is with the Black community. It's hard for an African-American to run District 3 and really pull it. So I think he did District 5 because he knew that the super voters was around his age. Everybody, he either been their basketball coach, taught them driver's ed, their principal, their assistant principal, something. So he knew that his connection was there. He didn't need to prove whether he qualified. His name alone, by being popular, not by being qualified.
So that's your answer, Luke. Anything else you'd like to add, Elvis?
No, I just hope that the judges most definitely look into this and be able to see that this is clear. In 2018, when he ran for School Board District 6 against Karen Perez, it was clear that he used his Seffner address. 2 years later, he decided if his story is accurate that he's put out there concerning with his mother-in-law, then in 2018, when he filed his Seffner address, that was a problem. This is the only time you'll see Sheikh Washington use this address when it was time to run for office. Pull his school records, 42 years he talks about being in the school system. The school system can provide much proof of his residence for the last, at least for the last 30-some years. Have a good day. Thank you so much, Heidi, for bringing this to awareness.
Okay. Have a great evening, Elvis. Good hearing from you. Bye. Okay. So we have a comment. Michelle Williams. Great show. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for tuning in. Okay there. So there you have it. It's 7:53. We are 7 minutes away from going for 1 hour. Alexandra, what else do you would like to offer up to the viewers? Again, they judge, the public. We're here providing what I think is important discussion. Everybody has their opinion. Everybody has their perspective. So you judge what you make of the information that's been provided to you. And I think that we're going to hear more about this in the news. And I think that there will be possibly an evidentiary hearing in front of the judge or the jury. Alexandra, would you like to add before we wrap up?
Just seeing how, Black moms, when it comes about changing addresses and they're just scrutinized when they want a better education. I just want to make sure, just like you said, Heidi, and just like you said, that they just go through everything and make sure that it wasn't, for other purposes, that he was really staying there, because we don't know. But I know how they treat Black moms when we're trying to get to a better school. And I know how even when it came to for the celebrity moms, when it came to the colleges, so they all were held accountable. So if it was something that was not just, then just be held accountable, And so I don't know, I'm not the judge, but as a mom in the community, we just want to make sure we have someone who is really there for children, because there are colored children all throughout this district, not just in District 5. We have to remember that.
Okay, well, I don't know what happened to Luke. He dropped off, and so that's a good point that you just made. I believe you earlier today, somebody anonymously or may have directly contacted you with that very issue, saying that that parents have gone to jail for lying about the address.
Mhm.
Right. And so at the end of the day, even if there's some appearance, even like, sometimes they talk about an appearance of impropriety, an appearance of impropriety, even though it's not actually what people are thinking that it is. There's an appearance that might be happening. We have to be above board, especially when it's a person that's on a school board, right?
Yeah.
Because kids are watching and they're going to see, and if kids get wind or they're following, there's, discussion in the community because of the news and people talking about it, their parents, adults, they're going to say, wow, is it worth losing some respect or having your authority maybe not respected because they're saying, oh, you're not maybe being above board. The perception, again, maybe he is, we don't know. Luke made a great point of maybe that seems extreme. Most people don't buy it. They're saying, nah, I don't buy that. But it could be that he legitimately said, I'm going to go ahead and live apart away from my wife and daughter because this office means so much to me. But so these are all the facts, the issues, the questions. It is important, though, that people, like Luke said, it's important. If that's a qualification, an election qualification, that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
Can't skirt it, do have an appearance of something as an artifice, like you said, Luke, in order to be able to qualify. We have to have integrity, especially our leaders who are held to or should be held to a higher standard. Alexandra, we have
I agree with you, Haiti. I think when it comes, and I don't know that there's anything to support this, but my belief would be that when you're dealing with something like the school board and the children and the future of our universe, that you are held to a higher standard than the normal politician who you would expect certain creativity or let's just leave it at that. You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying, Luke. I do know what you're saying. Okay, Haiti Oropesa, along with my good friend, awesome attorney, he's a legend, Luke Lirot. Thank you, Alexandra Gilmore, too, for joining us here. It was an awesome broadcast. I really enjoyed this discussion. Thanks to the viewers. Thank you so much.
Alexandra, you are a star. Thank you for joining us tonight, Haiti. Thank you for the privilege.
Oh,
and,
you're awesome.
Until next time, happy holidays to everybody.
Wait. I want to wrap up and sign off with this background music. For those of you that are watching, thanks for joining Florida You Judge with me and my guest. Please follow the Facebook Florida You Judge page so that you can be notified of other interesting conversations such as the one that we had tonight. Happy holidays, everyone.
There you go. Thank you, gang.
Tomorrow.
All right. You be well.
All right. Good night. Bye.
Good night. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks a lot. See you later.
Thank you for having it. Bye.